1 week has passed since Caroline's death, and this criminal complaint fills in a lot of the gaps we had before. It describes what police say was captured on video, how the confrontation unfolded, and what investigators say happened after Caroline Peña was stabbed.
You've seen the video. Maybe it came across your feed on its own. No context. Just two young women in handcuffs being walked to a patrol car, and one of them turns to the camera and smiles. That image traveled fast. Video obtained by Ken's 5 showed Del Rio police escorting the Diaz sisters out of a home in handcuffs and into patrol vehicles following their arrests, with one of the suspects smiling toward the camera before stepping into the patrol car. You know their names by now. Kitty, Cookie, their friend Kyandra. But here's what that video doesn't show you. It doesn't show you the 11 minutes of surveillance footage that put them there. It doesn't show you what investigators found in a washing machine 2 hours later. And it doesn't show you the woman whose name got attached to all of it. A name that, for a few days, was just the victim on a police blotter, before her friends and family made sure the world learned who she actually was. Newly released court documents changed the shape of this story. Not the ending. We already knew the ending. But the how, the when, the small physical details that turn a headline into a case file. And by the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly why prosecutors think they can prove not just that these three women were there, but that at least one of them tried to wash away the proof. If you've been following this case since it broke, you know how fast it moved. If this is your first time hearing about it, stick around, because the documents don't just confirm what happened, they complicate it. Subscribe now, because there's more coming out of this courthouse, and you don't want to miss the next piece of it. Before any of that, before the knife, before the washing machine, before the smile in the back of a patrol car, there was just Caroline. Her legal name was Caroline Raquel Peña. People who loved her called her Caro. She was 32 years old, a twin, and a mother of 5 children, the oldest a 17-year-old son close to graduating high school. Her best friend of 8 years, Cristina Salinas, described her the way you'd describe someone irreplaceable. Salinas said the two were inseparable, like sisters-in-law and best friends, someone who was there for everything, not just for Salinas, but for her kids too. Friends who grew up with her remembered someone who brought so much light to the people around her. Someone born to be a mom, someone bubbly, with an infectious laugh. And here's the detail that sits heaviest with the people who knew her. Just hours before the attack, Cristina had a missed call from Caroline. She told reporters she felt that if she'd answered, she would have been there with her, that it wouldn't have ended the way it did. She later recognized Caroline in a photo circulating online by the bun in her hair and the back of her shirt. She said that's all she needed to see to know it was her friend. That's who this case is actually about, not a mugshot, not a smiling arrest photo, a mother of 5, a twin sister, a friend who picked up the phone for everyone else's crisis, who this one time didn't get the chance to pick up for her own. The call came in to Del Rio police just after 2 in the afternoon on June 25th, not from the scene of an assault, from a hospital. Officers were dispatched to Val Verde Regional Medical Center after a report that a woman had walked in, suffering from multiple stab wounds. That's the detail worth sitting with for a second. This case didn't start with a 911 call from a street corner. It started with a hospital notifying police that someone was already bleeding in their emergency room, and detectives having to work backward to figure out where it happened at all. It didn't take them long. Witnesses pointed investigators to a home in the 800 block of East 10th Street, and from there, the timeline moves fast. Detectives reviewed local surveillance footage, processed physical evidence from the scene, and conducted witness interviews. And by 4 o'clock that same afternoon, less than 2 hours after the initial call, they had 3 names. Kitty Diaz, 21, her younger sister Amaya Kitty Diaz, 19, and their friend, Kyandra Faz, 21. Kitty and Cookie were arrested without incident at 4 p.m. Faz was taken into custody a short time later. That's the part that should stop you for a second. A stabbing to 3 named suspects in custody, all in the space of an afternoon. One detail complicates the monster framing right out of the gate. Chief Frank Ramirez later told reporters the 4 women weren't strangers to each other. They all lived in Del Rio, and Caroline had a reason to be at that house that day. He said the attack didn't look random to him. That's not a motive. Nobody's released one. But it's a thread that runs underneath everything else in this case. Whatever happened on East 10th Street, it happened between people who already knew each other. The first account investigators got came from Faz herself. According to the criminal complaint, she told police that Caroline had driven to her home that night looking to start a fight. Treat that carefully. It's a suspect's own words, given after her friend was already in a hospital bed, and self-interested statements are always the least reliable piece of any case file. But it's useful for another reason. It tells you what story the defense may eventually build the case around, and it raises its own unanswered question. If this was Faz's home, why did detectives ultimately trace the getaway vehicle to a completely different house, several miles away, on West Strickland? That gap, between where the fight allegedly started and where the suspects ended up, is one of the threads this case still hasn't tied off. Now here's the piece of evidence that removes almost all ambiguity about what physically happened that afternoon, even if it doesn't explain why. The home on East 10th Street had a surveillance camera running, and according to the criminal complaint, it captured the entirety of the incident. The footage shows Caroline arriving first, alone, in a black pickup truck. Minutes later, a black Chrysler 300 pulls up, and Kitty and Cookie get out. According to the complaint, Cookie exits the passenger side already holding what investigators believe to be a knife, and moves toward Caroline. The video allegedly shows Cookie stabbing Caroline in the back, and investigators specifically noted that blood became visible on the back of her shirt almost immediately. From there, the footage shows Kitty and Faz joining in, the assault escalating into all three women, before the group eventually breaks apart and leaves the scene. Caroline was stabbed twice in the back, and once in the stomach. Her friend Christina Salinas said later that those back wounds punctured her lungs. Caroline was airlifted to a trauma facility in San Antonio. She died there that evening. If this is hitting you the way it's hitting most people watching, that's the moment to hit subscribe. Because the next stretch of this story is about what investigators found after the cameras stopped rolling, and it's the part that turned this from one charge into several. Police tracked the Chrysler 300 to a home on West Strickland. When officers arrived to make the arrest, according to the complaint, Kitty and Cookie were no longer wearing the clothing seen in the surveillance footage, and both women's hair was wet, like they'd recently showered. Investigators got a search warrant for the house. Inside a washing machine, they say they found the pink halter-style crop top Kitty had been wearing on camera just hours earlier. That single detail, a piece of clothing sitting in a washer, is what moved this from a murder case into a murder plus tampering case. It resulted in an additional charge against Kitty Diaz, specifically, tampering with physical evidence. Prosecutors aren't just alleging that these three women killed Caroline Peña. They're alleging that at least one of them tried, in real time, to erase the proof of it. Sit with the timeline for a second, because this is the detail that seems to stay with people longer than almost anything else in this case. While Kitty and Cookie were showering off, changing clothes, loading a shirt into a washing machine, Caroline Peña was still alive. She was in a hospital in San Antonio, fighting for her life, being treated by trauma surgeons. Investigators weren't notified that she had died until around 9 o'clock that night, hours after the arrests, hours after that now viral photo of a suspect smiling into a patrol car camera. The people responsible for her injuries had already been booked, already showered, already smiled for a camera, while she was still fighting to survive the thing they'd done to her. Now a word on what all this evidence can and can't do. Legally, all three women, Kitty, Cookie, and Kyandra, have been charged with murder, even though investigators allege only one of them, Cookie, was the one holding the knife. That's not unusual, and it's not overreach. Under Texas's law of parties, someone who helps, encourages, or participates in a crime that results in death can be charged the same as the person who inflicted the fatal wound. So the surveillance footage doesn't just need to show who swung first. Legally, prosecutors only need to show that all three were knowingly part of the same assault. Each woman has been held on $5 million bail. All three have requested court-appointed attorneys. And it's worth remembering, a charge is not a conviction. Everything above comes from a criminal complaint and statements from police, allegations that still have to hold up in a courtroom. There's still real gaps in this story. Police have not released a motive. Nobody yet knows definitively why Caroline drove to that house that day, or what exactly the reason the chief referenced actually was. There's still the mismatch between the house where the fight allegedly began and the one where the suspects were finally found. And there's the murder weapon itself, described only as an object believed to be a knife in the complaint, which, as far as public records show, still hasn't been recovered. Those are the pieces of evidence still missing. When the next round of documents drops, that's likely where they'll show up. Caroline Peña was laid to rest a week after she died. She left behind 5 children, the oldest just 17, and a twin sister who now has to carry a piece of this alone. Her friends remember her laugh before they remember anything else about her. This infectious, room-filling laugh. From a woman they say was born to be a mom. A GoFundMe has been set up to help support her children going forward. 2 women smiled in the back of a patrol car. Caroline doesn't get to smile for anyone anymore. The least the rest of us can do is remember her as more than the woman in the case file. If you want to be here when the next batch of evidence comes out, subscribe now. This case is still active, and there's more coming. And as always, Kitty Diaz, Amaya Diaz, and Kyandra Faz have been charged, not convicted. Under the law, they are presumed innocent, unless and until proven guilty in a court of law.